The swing set in Ridgeway Park hadn't been painted in years. The chains were rusted at the top, and the wooden seat had split along one edge, leaving a splinter that caught fabric if you weren't careful. Most kids avoided it. Most kids had someone to bring them to better parks with rubber flooring and bright colors and water features that sprayed cool mist on hot afternoons. Lily Calloway sat on that broken swing anyway. She had been sitting there for most of the morning. The August sun had climbed to noon and was pressing hard against the back of her neck, but she didn't move. Her sneakers dragged slow circles in the dirt below the swing, two shallow grooves worn into the earth. Her backpack sat between her feet, a purple one with a broken zipper she'd been meaning to ask her mom to fix. She hadn't gotten around to asking. There wasn't going to be a chance now. She was 9 years old and she had not eaten since yesterday afternoon. The park was in the east part of Denver, tucked between a row of apartment buildings and a Dollar General that kept its windows papered over with sale signs. Pigeons walked the sidewalk in front of it, pecking at something. A man in a green jacket sat on a bench across the grass and talked to himself in a low, even voice. Two boys rode bikes in slow circles around the fountain that hadn't worked since spring. Nobody paid attention to Lily. Nobody had for 2 days. Her mother's name was Joanna. She was 31 years old and she wore her dark hair in a braid most days, and she smelled like the lavender soap she bought at the pharmacy on Colfax. She also drank too much, and she owed money to people whose names Lily didn't know, and sometimes she sat on the kitchen floor at 2 in the morning and cried about things she never explained. But she came back. That was the thing Lily held on to. Whatever else Joanna was, she always came back. Until she didn't. 2 mornings ago, Lily woke to an empty apartment. Her mother's keys were still on the hook by the door, which was wrong. Her coffee mug was on the counter, half full and cold, which was wrong. The bathroom light was on the way. It always was when her mother left early for work, but her work shoes were still under the bed, which was very wrong. Lily sat at the kitchen table for 2 hours before she understood that something had changed. Not the way her mother was sometimes gone for a few hours. Not the way she sometimes stayed at a friend's apartment overnight and forgot to call. This was different. The air in the apartment felt different, heavier, like the space knew something Lily didn't yet. She ate the last of the cereal that morning. She ate crackers and peanut butter for dinner. Yesterday, she ate the heel of a bread loaf and the last orange from the fruit bowl. There was nothing left now except a can of soup she couldn't open because the pull tab had broken off, and a box of baking soda in the back of the fridge that had been there since before Christmas. She had thought about going to a neighbor. The woman in 4B had seen Lily in the hallway and sometimes nodded. But Lily didn't know her name, and she was 9, and the rules about talking to strangers lived somewhere deep in her chest, hard and cold, even when the stranger was a neighbor. She had thought about calling 911, but she had seen what happened when adults called the police about kids with no one looking after them. She had heard kids at school talk about it. The word they used was system, and the way they said it wasn't a safe word. It was a word like a door closing. So she had come to the park instead. She didn't have a plan. She was 9 years old. Plans were for later when you were older and the world made more sense and people didn't just disappear. For now, she was just sitting in a place that had other people in it because the apartment had gotten very quiet and very big, and the quiet was worse than anything. She was still sitting there when the man appeared. She didn't notice him right away. He came from the direction of the parking lot, walking slowly the way people walked when they were pretending not to go anywhere in particular. He was tall, maybe as tall as the tallest teacher at her school, and he wore a light gray shirt tucked into dark jeans, and he had sunglasses even though the sky had gone partly cloudy. His hair was short and neat. He didn't look dangerous. That was the thing about him, the thing Lily thought about much later, lying in a strange bed in a strange house replaying every detail. He didn't look like anything she'd been warned about. He just looked like a man. He stopped a few feet from the swing set and looked at the fountain. Then he looked at Lily in a casual, sideways way that was meant to seem like he hadn't planned to look at her. "Rough day," he said. Lily didn't answer. "You've been sitting there a while," he said. "I noticed when I came in. That was about an hour ago." She looked at him now, studying. He had an ordinary face, not unkind. He put his hands in his pockets and kept his distance, which felt like a thing done on purpose. "I'm fine," she said. "Sure," he said easily. He didn't argue. "Hot out here, though. My name's Gerald. I'm just waiting for someone." He gestured vaguely toward the parking lot. She didn't offer her name. He waited a beat, then said, "You know, I think I might know your mom." The words landed differently than anything else had. Something in her chest moved a small door opening when she hadn't meant it to. "You know my mom," she said, and her voice came out smaller than she'd intended. "Joanna Wright, dark hair, usually has a braid. She used to work at the coffee place on Colfax about 2 years ago." The details were right, all of them. Lily's fingers tightened around the chain of the swing. "She asked me to come find you," Gerald said. "She got into a little bit of trouble. Nothing serious, but she couldn't come herself, and she wanted someone to make sure you were okay. She said you might be at the park." It was a careful, practiced lie. Each piece of it was close enough to the shape of truth that it slid past the hard place in her chest where the rules about strangers lived. Her mother had been in trouble before. Her mother knew people from the coffee shop. Her mother knew Lily came to the park. She should have asked what kind of trouble. She should have asked for a phone number to call. She should have done a dozen things that would have shattered the lie on contact. She was 9 years old and she hadn't eaten since yesterday, and she missed her mother so badly it felt like a physical weight pressing on her ribs. "She's okay?" Lily asked. "She's okay," Gerald said. "She just needs a little time to sort some things out. She wanted me to bring you somewhere safe while she does, somewhere warm with food. You hungry?" She didn't answer that question either, but she picked up her backpack. He had a silver sedan. It was clean inside, which surprised her for a reason she couldn't name, and it smelled like air freshener pine and something chemical underneath. He put the radio on low in oldies station, and he drove without talking much, which she was grateful for because she didn't know what to say. They went south first, which confused her because she would have thought they'd go toward Colfax where her mother's trouble was. But she didn't ask. She watched the city go by outside the window. The familiar neighborhoods dropping away, the streets getting wider, the apartment buildings giving way to strip malls, then to highway. The highway signs said east. Then they said Colorado Springs. Then they were past Colorado Springs, and the land opened up flat and pale under the August sky. She said, "Where are we going?" "It's about 2 hours," Gerald said. He smiled in the rearview mirror. "There's water in the cup holder." 2 hours passed, and then another. The landscape changed around them, softening into sage and low hills, and the towns they passed through got smaller and farther apart. Lily watched them go. She drank the water. She ate the granola bar Gerald produced from the center console without being asked, and she hated herself a little for eating it because eating felt like agreeing to something. Gerald took a call somewhere around the second hour. He glanced in the mirror at Lily first. She had let her eyes go heavy, let her head tip slightly against the window, the practiced stillness of a child pretending sleep. She had learned that skill long ago on nights when her mother had company she didn't want Lily to meet. Gerald spoke low. "Everything's on schedule. Stringer's been notified." A pause. "No, I've got her. Route something." She couldn't catch the number. "Blue roof. Yeah." He ended the call. Lily held herself still against the window. She turned the words over in her mind the way she turned things over when she needed to keep them. Stringer. Blue roof. She repeated them silently until they were fixed. At some point, she fell asleep for real the way children could fall asleep against their will when their bodies had run too long on fear and nothing else. She woke when the car slowed, and through the window she saw a gas station with a red and white sign, a shell set back from the road on a stretch of two-lane highway with no town visible in either direction. The clock on the dash said 10:14 p.m. They had been driving for more than 4 hours. "Quick stop," Gerald said. He got out first and went inside. Lily sat in the car for a moment, looking at the building, at the fluorescent light bleeding out through the glass at the empty parking lot. A moth circled the lights above the pumps. No other cars. The highway was dark in both directions. She reached into her backpack and found what she was looking for. A blue ballpoint pen, the kind that came in a pack of 10 for $1, the kind she used for school. She looked at it for a moment. Then she looked at the gas station door. Gerald was inside, visible through the glass, standing at the counter. She had 5 minutes, maybe less. She opened the pen and pressed it to her palm, then stopped. Not her palm. If he saw marks on her palm, he would know. She needed paper. She dug in the backpack and found only a folded worksheet from school math problems, her name already written on it in her own handwriting. She couldn't use that. He would see the name. Gerald was still at the counter. His back was to her. She unzipped the front pocket of the backpack and found a $1 bill crumpled, pushed to the back, the kind of forgotten money that stayed in pockets for months. She smoothed it on her knee. George Washington's face looked up at her. She pressed the pen to the paper. Her hand was shaking. She had to press hard to make the ink show on the old soft surface of the bill. 2 words. That was all she had time for. All she could think of. Help me. She clicked the pen closed and put it back. She folded the bill and held it in her fist. Gerald came out of the door and she relaxed her hand before he reached the car, letting her fingers hang loose against her leg. Want anything, he said through the window. Can I get a candy bar, she asked. He looked at her for a moment. Sure, he said. Come in. She went inside. The clerk was young, maybe in his mid-20s, wearing a polo shirt with a faded logo. He was looking at his phone. The store was empty except for the three of them. Gerald went to look at the refrigerator case. Lily walked to the candy rack and picked up a Snickers bar and carried it to the register. Just this, she said. The clerk looked up from his phone. He took the Snickers and scanned it. Lily put the dollar bill on the counter, smoothing it flat with one finger, the blue ink upward, the words visible if he looked. He didn't look. He took the bill, dropped it in the register, and handed her a Snickers bar and some change. He was already looking at his phone again before she turned away. She walked back to Gerald and they left. 12 minutes after Lily's feet left the gas station floor, a man named Rex Maddox walked in. He was 43 years old, and though he looked older in some lights and younger in others, depending on whether his jaw was set or relaxed. He had a scar that ran from the hinge of his jaw down to the base of his neck, a silvery line that had been there long enough he'd stopped noticing it in mirrors. He wore a black leather vest over a gray shirt, and his hands were the kind of hands that had done physical work for most of their life, broad and scarred at the knuckles. He bought a pack of cigarettes and paid with a 20. The clerk counted out change, 3 5s, 4 1s. Rex picked up the bills and counted them under the fluorescent light. He stopped at the last bill. He turned it over. The ink was faint but legible. Blue ballpoint, a child's uneven hand, the E slightly smudged where the pen had dragged. Help me. He stood still for a moment looking at it. The clerk had gone back to his phone. The store was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator cases. Rex was not a man given to imagination or catastrophizing. He had grown up in a family where problems were handled quietly and complaints were kept short. He had worked with his hands since he was 17. He had ridden with the same group of men for 15 years, men he trusted with his life and occasionally did. He was not a man who saw danger in every shadow or trouble behind every corner, but he was also a man who had lost a daughter. Her name had been Cassie. She had been 7 years old when a drunk driver took her on a Tuesday morning in October, and the hole that left in his life was not the kind of hole that filled in with time the way people said it would. It had been 6 years and the hole was exactly the same size and shape. It had just moved from the front of his chest to a place slightly behind his sternum where he could carry it without it showing. He looked at the smudged blue letters again. He folded the bill and put it in his vest pocket and walked back outside. His bike sat where he'd left it, a black Harley with worn saddlebags and a dented tank from a fall 3 years back that he'd never gotten around to fixing. He stood in the parking lot and looked down the highway in both directions. Nothing, just darkness and the distant orange glow of a town he couldn't see. He pulled out his phone and dialed. It rang twice. Yeah. The voice was older, rough-edged, the voice of a man who had smoked for 30 years and slept light his whole life. It's Rex, he said. I'm at the Shell off Route 47. I need you out here. Bring whoever's close. What is it? Rex pulled the bill from his vest and looked at it again. Just come, he said. He hung up. 15 minutes later, 3 headlights appeared in the east running, single file, low and steady. They pulled into the lot and killed their engines in sequence. The silence came back, and in it, Rex could hear the moths hitting the lights above the pumps. The first man off his bike was Walt Pruitt. He was 58 years old and had a gray beard that reached the 3rd button of his vest, and the kind of face that had done a lot of living without apologizing for any of it. He had patches sewn across the back of his jacket that told a story anyone in this world could read. He walked with a slight roll to his left shoulder from an injury that had never healed quite right, and when he stopped in front of Rex, he didn't speak first. He just waited. 2 men followed him. The first was Danny Rourke, built wide across the shoulders, tattoos running up both forearms in dense black patterns. He was quiet by default, the kind of man who listened more than he spoke and noticed things other people missed. The second was a younger man, Trip Walcott, 31, shaved head, a scar through his left eyebrow from a fight he'd been in a long time ago and didn't talk about. He was the fastest of the 3 to move when movement was needed, and he knew it, and he kept that knowledge calm and stored like a tool on a shelf. Walt held his hand out. Rex put the bill in it. Walt tilted it toward the light, read the words. His jaw tightened once a small movement, then went still. He passed it to Danny. Danny read it and passed it to Tripp. When, Walt asked. I got it 12 minutes after she left, Rex said. She was here with a man, tall, sunglasses. The clerk didn't see the car. Did she write this here? I think so. She bought a candy bar, handed the clerk the bill when she paid. Walt looked at the wine station, then back at Rex. Could be nothing, he said. Yeah, Rex said. But it's not, Walt said. It wasn't a question. No, Rex said, it's not. Walt looked down the highway. She could be anywhere. Maybe, Rex said, or maybe not far. Walt looked at him. Why? Because she wrote it for a reason. She didn't just drop it. She handed it to the clerk. She put it where someone was going to hold it. She wanted it found here. If she wanted it found here, maybe she's still close. He stopped somewhere. The wind moved through the parking lot, pushing a paper cup across the asphalt. It scraped and tumbled and came to rest against the base of a pump. Danny spoke up. There's a motel about 2 miles east. The Pines. Been there since the 70s. 1 story, 10 rooms. People use it when they don't want to be seen. Walt and Rex looked at each other. We check it, Walt said. They rode east with their headlights off, running on the edge of the road, engines low. The darkness was complete out here, no street lights, just the pale sky above, and the fat land on both sides and the white dashes of the center line passing beneath them. The motel appeared after a mile and a half, a sign at the road, 1 letter missing, and behind it a long, low building set back on a gravel lot. Half the bulbs above the room doors were burned out. A single window in the office glowed yellow. They pulled to the far end of the lot and killed the engines. The gravel was loud in the stillness. They sat for a moment and listened. No voices, no movement. A television murmured from somewhere. Rex went to the office alone. The door had a small bell above it that chimed when he pushed it open. A woman in her 50s sat behind the desk, bleached hair, a cigarette burning in an ashtray beside a coffee mug, a small TV on the shelf showing a game show with the volume low. She looked up at Rex without particular alarm or welcome. She had been behind this desk long enough that very little alarmed her. Help you, she said. Looking for someone, Rex said. Man checked in tonight. Tall sunglasses, maybe had a kid with him. The woman's eyes moved in a way that was almost nothing, a slight narrowing quickly corrected. She reached for her cigarette and drew on it. Don't know what you're talking about, she said. Rex reached into his vest and put the dollar bill on the counter. The woman looked at it. She read it slowly as though she needed to be sure of what the words were. Her hand stopped halfway to the ashtray, the cigarette held still in the air for a moment. Room 6, she said quietly. Checked in 40 minutes ago. Paid cash. Car's out front. Is he still there? He hasn't come out. Rex picked up the bill and turned to leave. Hey, the woman said. He stopped. She wasn't looking at him. She was looking at the television, but not watching it. That girl, she said. Is she okay? Not yet, Rex said. He walked back across the gravel lot. Walt was leaning against his bike, arms folded. The other 2 stood nearby, watching the row of doors. A silver sedan sat directly in front of room 6. The license plate was covered in dried mud, the numbers unreadable. Room 6, Rex said. He's here, car's out front. Walt looked at the sedan. Plates are dirty. Yeah. What's the play? Tripp asked. We knock, Walt said. We talk. He started walking. The others fell in behind him and Rex pulled even with Walt as they crossed the lot. They stopped outside room 6. The curtains were drawn across the window, a thin line of light showing at the bottom. No voices from inside, no movement. Walt knocked. 3 times steady, not hard enough to alarm, not soft enough to be ignored. Silence. He knocked again. A voice from inside muffled by the door. Who is it? Need to talk to you, Walt said. About what? About the girl. A long pause. Long enough that Rex put his boot near the frame without touching it yet. Then footsteps slow and careful. The lock turned. The door opened a crack, chain still on. A face in the gap. Late 30s, unshaven eyes that moved quickly even while trying to hold still. No sunglasses now, and without them, the face looked younger and more frightened. I don't know what you're talking about, the man said. Yeah, you do, Walt said. The man started to push the door closed. Rex put his boot against the frame. The door met leather and stopped. We're not leaving, Rex said. The man looked at Rex, then at Walt, then at the 2 shapes standing behind them in the darkness. His jaw moved, but no sound came out. She's my daughter, he said finally. No, she's not, Rex said. The man's eyes went to Rex. Something in them shifted. You don't know that. Where is she? Walt asked. The man didn't answer. Rex reached into his vest and pulled out the dollar bill, held it flat against the gap in the door where the light was strong enough to read by. She wrote this, Rex said, at the gas station 20 minutes ago. The man looked at the bill. The color left his face in a way that was complete and immediate, like a light going out. His mouth opened and formed the beginning of a word that never came. Walt put his hand on the door. Not a shove, just a steady, even pressure. The chain was old. The screws that held the plate to the frame were loose with years of use. The chain held for 2 seconds, then the plate pulled free with a short, soft sound, and the door swung open. The man stumbled back into the room, and there, sitting on the edge of the bed, still wearing a torn red hoodie, was a small girl with blonde hair and tired eyes. She looked up when the door opened. Her gaze moved across the men in the doorway and found Rex, and something in her face went very still, the way a person weighs still when they've been wound tight for a long time and the winding suddenly stops. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. Rex stepped inside. The man was pressed against the far wall, hands up, saying something about how he could explain about how it wasn't what they thought. Rex wasn't listening. He was looking at the girl, at the torn shoulder of her hoodie, at the backpack on the floor between her feet, with its broken zipper, at the way she held her hands folded in her lap, with a stillness that was not peace but its opposite. Walt came in behind him. Danny and Tripp held the doorway. The room was small and close. One bed, a nightstand with a water glass and a room key on it, a bathroom door half open with the light off. The air smelled like the road and old carpet and the particular staleness of rooms that had held many strangers and absorbed nothing good from any of them. A duffel bag sat on the floor beside the bed, unzipped clothes spilling from the top. Walt looked at the girl. "What's your name?" She didn't answer right away. Her eyes went to the man against the wall, then back to Walt. "It's okay," Walt said, and his voice dropped to something that wasn't soft exactly, but was quiet and deliberate. The voice of someone who understood that she had no reason to believe anything he said and was going to say it anyway. "We're not going to hurt you." Her lips moved. "Lily," she said, just the one word barely above a whisper. "Lily," Walt repeated. "That's a good name." She looked at him. "Did you write on that dollar bill?" he asked. A pause, then she nodded. "Why?" Her eyes went to the man again. The man started to say something, and Rex took one step toward him. The man's mouth closed. "He told me not to," Lily said, "but I did it anyway." "That was brave," Walt said. She didn't answer. She looked like she didn't know what to do with that word. The man spoke from the wall. "She's confused. She doesn't understand what's happening." Rex turned and looked at him. The look was not threatening in any obvious way. It was the look of a man who had decided something and wasn't going to be redirected. "Shut up," Rex said. The man shut up. Walt crouched down in front of Lily, hands loose on his knees, eyes level with hers. "Is he your dad?" She shook her head. "Uncle Family." Another shake. "How do you know him?" Her hands twisted in her lap. "He said he knew my mom. He said she sent him to get me." "And you believed him?" "He knew her name," Lily said, "and where she worked, and that I go to the park." Her voice was flat but not empty. There was something careful in it, the way a person spoke when they were deciding how much to give away. "Where'd he pick you up?" Rex asked. "Denver," she said, "a park near my apartment." "When?" "This afternoon. We drove for a long time." Rex looked at the man. "You drove her from Denver." The man said nothing. "4 hours," Rex said. "You drove a 9-year-old girl 4 hours from Denver and brought her to this motel." He paused. "What were you going to do?" The man looked at the floor. Danny had moved to the duffel bag and was crouching beside it, pulling things out, methodical and quiet. Men's clothes, a phone charger, a Ziploc bag with toiletries. He found the wallet and flipped through it. "ID says Gerald Stokes," Danny said. "Chicago address." "Long way from home," Walt said. "I was going to call someone," Gerald said. His voice had found a new quality, slightly faster now, a particular cadence of a man trying out a story. "She's a runaway. I was going to call child services. I just needed to get her somewhere safe first, somewhere off the street, and then I was going to—" "Stop," Rex said. Gerald stopped. "Lily," Rex said, "did you run away?" "No," she said. "Where's your mom?" She looked at her lap. "I don't know. She was gone when I woke up 2 days ago. She didn't come back." "So you were alone," Walt said. "Yes. 2 days," Rex said quietly. Danny reached deeper into the duffel bag and his hand found something. He pulled it out slowly. A spiral notebook, small, its cover bent and stained at one corner. He opened it and turned pages. His face went flat in a way that was worse than any expression. "Walt," he said. Walt stood and walked to him. Danny held out the notebook. Walt read. His grip tightened on the cover. He turned a page, turned another. "What is it?" Rex asked. Walt didn't answer immediately. He read one more page, then closed the notebook with a small, careful motion, like he was closing something that needed to be treated with care. He looked at Gerald. "You want to tell me what this is?" Walt said. Gerald had gone white. "That's private property. You have no right." "Lily," Rex said, keeping his voice even. "Has he touched you?" She shook her head. "Has he hurt you?" Another shake. "Did he say what was going to happen when you got to this motel?" She was quiet for a moment. "He said we were going to meet someone," she said. "He didn't say who." Rex looked at Walt. Walt handed him the notebook. Rex opened it. It was a list. 18 names, all first names and last initials arranged in a column down the left side of the page. Beside each name was a number. Ages, Rex understood after a moment. The numbers ranged from 7 to 11. Beside the ages were addresses, street numbers, and city abbreviations. Denver appeared 6 times. Colorado Springs 3 times. Pueblo twice. Further cities Rex didn't recognize. At the bottom of each entry in smaller writing a date and a 2-letter code. The date stretched from 3 months ago to 1 week from today. Rex turned the page. The second page was a single address, a highway route number, and the name of a town Rex had never heard of, followed by a physical description of a building. White exterior, 2 outbuildings, one with a blue roof. Then a name, not a full name, just an initial and a surname. Stringer. Below that a time, 11 a.m., 3 days from now. Rex closed the notebook. He was very still for a moment, the way he got still when something required all of his attention. Then he looked at Gerald Stokes. Gerald was watching him with the eyes of a man who had realized that the story he'd been preparing was no longer adequate for what was happening in the room. 18 names, Rex said. Gerald didn't speak. "All kids? All under 12. Rex held up the notebook. "You want to explain this?" Gerald looked at the door. He looked at Danny and Tripp standing in it. He looked at the floor. "I want a lawyer," he said. Walt crossed to the nightstand and picked up the motel phone. He dialed 3 numbers. Waited. "Yeah," he said. "I need police at the Pines Motel off Route 47, room 6. We've got a situation." He listened for a moment. "No, stay on. I'll give you the specifics." Gerald sat down on the floor with his back against the wall and put his head in his hands. Lily hadn't moved from the edge of the bed through any of it. She sat with her hands in her lap watching Rex. Not Gerald, not Walt. Rex. Like she had decided on some level below conscious thought that he was the one to watch. Rex sat down on the chair beside the TV stand. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and looked at her. She looked back. Neither of them spoke for a moment. "You wrote that bill at the gas station," Rex said. "Yes," while he was inside. "He went in first. He left me in the car." She paused. "I had a pen in my bag." Rex looked at the backpack, looked at the broken zipper, looked at the small shape of her in the too big hoodie, the torn shoulder, the strand of hair falling across her face. "That was a smart thing to do," he said. She didn't respond to that either. She seemed to have heard so few things today that were worth responding to that she'd stopped trying to filter them. "You're safe now," Rex said. "He's not going to take you anywhere." She nodded once. Her eyes were dry. They had the quality of eyes that had been crying for 2 days and had run through whatever reserve was available and come out the other side into something steadier and harder. "Is my mom okay?" she asked. Rex held her gaze. He wasn't going to lie to this child. He had made that decision without thinking about it. A decision that lived below the level of thought in the part of him that remembered a 7-year-old girl and what it meant to speak carefully to a child who was already carrying too much weight. "I don't know," he said, "but someone's going to find out." She nodded again. She seemed to understand that honest uncertainty was the best she was going to get, and that it was better than false comfort, and she accepted it with a gravity that didn't belong in a 9-year-old's face. Outside, the sirens started. A distant wail growing closer, shredding the silence of the highway night. Red and blue light began to flash through the curtains, strobing across the walls of the small room. Lily watched the lights. She didn't look frightened. She looked tired and small, and alone in a way that had nothing to do with the number of people in the room with her. But she was still sitting up straight. The door opened, and the officers came in. Gerald Stokes was cuffed without incident, read his rights in a flat official voice, and walked outside. Lily stayed on the bed. A female officer, young with dark hair, pulled back, knelt down, and spoke to her gently in the way people learn to speak to children in situations like this, careful and measured. Lily answered in short sentences. "Yes. No. Denver." 2 days. She didn't elaborate. She didn't need to elaborate. The shape of the story was already clear. The officer stood and walked to Rex and Walt. "You the one who called?" she asked Walt. "Yeah. How'd you find her?" Rex reached into his vest and handed her the dollar bill. She took it, read it, looked up at Lily on the bed, small and still and separate from everything happening around her. The officer's expression shifted in a way that was brief and complete, like a wave passing across water. "We'll take her to county," she said. "They'll figure out placement from there." "She doesn't want to go," Rex said. "She's a minor with no guardian present. She goes into the system." The officer's voice wasn't unkind. It was just the voice of a person who had said this many times and understood what it cost each time and kept saying it because there was nothing else to say. They came for Lily, then the same female officer speaking quietly, her hand held out, not grabbing, just offering. Lily looked at the hand for a moment. Then she looked at Rex. Then she looked at Walt. She stood up and picked up her backpack, the purple one with the broken zipper, and she walked toward the officer. She paused when she reached Rex. "Thank you," she said, almost too quiet to hear. "You're going to be okay," Rex said. She looked at him. Her eyes were old in that tired, particular way that didn't belong to a child's face, the way that came from carrying things that were supposed to be carried by adults. She didn't say whether she believed him. She walked out of the room with the officer, and the night took her, and the red and blue lights went with her, and then the lot was quiet. The duffel bag sat on the floor of the empty room. The notebook was an evidence base, now tagged and sealed. Rex stood in the doorway and looked at the silver sedan, its plates still caked in dried mud. Walt came and stood beside him. "That notebook," Rex said. 18 names. "Yeah, we only found one." Walt was quiet. "There's an address in the back," Rex said. "A name. Stringer." Walt looked at him. "You read it." "I read it." "Did you tell the cops?" "Everything." Walt nodded. "Then it's theirs now." "Is it?" Walt was quiet again. The moths were still hitting the lights above the motel office. Somewhere down the highway, a truck was running its engine, a distant, constant sound like breathing. "She's 9 years old," Rex said. "She sat in that park alone for 2 days after her mother disappeared. Nobody noticed. Nobody stopped." He paused. The clerk at the gas station looked right at what she wrote and put it in the register. "You stopped," Walt said. "I got lucky," Rex said. "I got the right bill. How many didn't?" Walt didn't answer because there was no answer that helped. Rex pulled his keys from his pocket. He looked at them in his hand. Then he looked down the road in the direction the police cars had gone, their lights already invisible in the distance, taking Lily Calloway to a county facility in a county she'd never seen before, to be placed with people she'd never met, to wait for a system to figure out what to do with her. She's safe now, he told himself. But the word felt like a very small shelter for a very large storm. Rex rode back to the gas station. He didn't have a plan. He parked at the far end of the lot where the light didn't reach and sat on his bike and looked at the building. The clerk was still inside, still on his phone, visible through the glass, leaning against the counter, the way people leaned when nothing was required of them. Rex went inside. The bell chimed. The clerk looked up. Rex walked to the counter and put both hands flat on the surface. "The girl who was in here earlier," he said, "before me. Red hoodie, blonde hair. 9 years old, came in with a man." The clerk set his phone down slowly. "Yeah, I remember. She gave you a dollar bill." "Yeah, she bought a Snickers." "Did you look at the bill?" The clerk hesitated. Rex could see the calculation happening, the assessment of whether telling the truth was the path of least resistance or not. "No," the clerk said. "I don't look at the bills. I handle like 300 a night." Rex reached into his vest and put the dollar bill on the counter between them. The clerk looked at it, read it. His face did something complicated. Not guilt exactly, not indifference. Something in between, the face of a person who had just realized they were inside a moment they didn't register as a moment. "I didn't see it," the clerk said. "I know," Rex said. "That's the problem." The clerk looked up at him. He was young, maybe 24, 25. His eyes were doing something that wasn't quite shame and wasn't quite defensiveness. He was looking for the right response to a thing he hadn't prepared for. "Is she okay?" he asked. Rex picked up the bill. "She will be," he said. "Pay attention." He walked out. He sat in the parking lot for another few minutes before starting the bike. He thought about the girl in the park sitting on a broken swing, her backpack between her feet. He thought about how long she had been sitting there, 2 days waiting for a world that walked past her. He thought about what it meant to be 9 years old and alone and smart enough to know that screaming would not work and that what you needed was something quieter, something that would travel farther, something that would find the right person if you put it in the right hands and trusted the odds. She had trusted the odds. He had almost been the wrong person. 30 seconds later, and he'd have been on his bike before he counted the change. 5 feet closer to the door, and the motion would have carried him out without stopping to look. He started the bike and pulled out onto the highway. Walt was waiting for him at the edge of the lot, leaning against his Harley, a cigarette burning down between his fingers. "You went back in," Walt said. "Yeah." The clerk, kid, didn't see it. Rex parked and swung off the bike. He wasn't a bad person. He just wasn't paying attention. Walt flicked ash onto the gravel. "Most people aren't. That's the problem." Rex sat on the edge of his saddlebag. She planned that. She thought it through. She knew he might check her hands for a pen, so she used a bill. She knew the clerk handles hundreds of bills a night, so she kept it short. She handed it to someone she hoped would pass it on. And you were the one who got it. By accident. Walt was quiet. He took a long draw on the cigarette and let the smoke out slowly. "Danny and Tripp are heading back," Walt said. "Police kept them for statements." "Good. The notebook's in evidence." Walt looked at the dark highway. "They'll follow up on the address." "Will they?" Walt looked at him. It was a direct look, not challenging, just clear. Walt was a man who had worked within the limits of things for a long time and understood those limits without bitterness. "They'll try," Walt said. "Whether they get there in time is another thing." Rex turned the dollar bill over in his hand. The words were facing up. He had read them enough times now that they were not letters anymore, but an image, the shape of a thing, the shape of a child's last attempt at being heard. "The name in the notebook," Rex said. "Stringer, the address in the hills, the pickup in 3 days." "Rex, I'm just talking." "No, you're not." Walt dropped the cigarette and put his boot on it. "You're thinking about going." Rex didn't confirm or deny it. He folded the bill and put it back in his vest. "She's safe," Walt said. "Lily, she's out of it. The cops have Gerald. The notebook is in evidence." "The notebook has 17 other names on it," Rex said. "And an address? And a name. That's for the police to—" "They said it'll be handled," Rex said. "Same way they said Lily would be fine when they put her in that car. Safe. Not the same thing." Walt was quiet. The highway ran dark and straight in both directions, empty at this hour. Just the flat, pale brush on both sides and the sky overhead, going deep and full with stars. "Let me make some calls tomorrow," Walt said finally. "Let me find out what the police are doing with that address before we do anything." Rex nodded. That was reasonable. Walt was usually reasonable. It was one of the things that made him worth listening to. "And Rex," Walt said. Rex looked at him. "You did the right thing tonight. You stopped. You came back." Rex said nothing. "Cassie would have been proud," Walt said quietly. The words landed in the silence and stayed there. Rex didn't respond to them. He didn't need to, and Walt didn't need him to. That was the thing about Walt. He said what needed to be said, and then he left space for it to be true or not, and he didn't require acknowledgement. Rex started his bike. He rode home alone down the dark highway, the stars moving slowly above him, the way they did when you were traveling, and they were staying still, and he thought about a girl named Lily sitting in a county facility somewhere north of here, in a room that wasn't hers, in a bed that wasn't hers, in a silence that was probably very loud. He thought about the dollar bill in his vest, the blue ink, the smudged E. He thought about Cassie. He rode home and lay down in the dark and did not sleep for a long time. In a county facility 40 miles north, Lily Calloway lay in a narrow bed in a room with 2 other beds, both empty. The room had beige walls and a single window that looked out onto a parking lot. A fluorescent light in the hallway made a thin strip under the door. She had her backpack beside the bed, still zipped shut because she hadn't been able to open the broken zipper all the way. She had eaten a sandwich that someone brought, and she had drunk a cup of orange juice, and she had answered questions from a woman with a clipboard who spoke in the same careful, measured way as the officer, the way people spoke when they had been trained to make things feel smaller than they were. The woman had told her they were looking for her mother. She had told her they were going to find somewhere safe for her to stay while they did. Lily had nodded at the right moments and said yes at the right moments and not said the thing she was thinking, which was that her mother had left on purpose. She had not said it because she wasn't completely sure it was true and because the weight of it being true was too heavy to put down in this room with this stranger and this clipboard. She lay in the dark and looked at the strip of light under the door. She thought about the man with the scar on his neck. Rex. She hadn't caught his name until one of the other men used it near the end, and she'd held on to it the way you held on to something small and useful. Rex. He had looked at her like she was a person, not a problem or a case or a situation. A person. That was rarer than people thought. She reached under the pillow and found the pen she'd slipped in there when she got undressed. Blue ballpoint still capped. She held it in both hands in the dark. She had used it once already and it had worked. She didn't know yet what she was going to have to use it for next, but she was going to keep it close. Outside the window, the parking lot was empty and still, and the August night pressed warm and indifferent against the glass, and the highway that had brought her here was invisible in the dark. Just a sound, sometimes the low passage of trucks heading somewhere, carrying things moving through the night toward a destination that was already decided. Lily closed her eyes. She did not sleep easily, but eventually she slept. 3 days after the motel, Rex sat in a diner off Route 31 with cold coffee in front of him and Walt's voice on the phone. "The police are moving on the Stringer address," Walt said. "State investigators, not just county." The notebook opened something bigger than one kidnapping. They've connected Gerald Stokes to 2 other cases from the last 6 months. Girls picked up from public places in Colorado and Wyoming. Both ended up in the system before anyone understood what had happened. Ended up how? Placed in foster care, both within 50 miles of the address in the notebook. Walt paused, which suggests the placement wasn't accidental. Rex put down the coffee. "Someone inside the system. They're looking at it. That's all I know." Another pause. "The investigators told me to stay out of it." "What did you say?" "I told them I would." Rex looked out the window at the parking lot. A woman was loading groceries into the back of a minivan, a toddler on her hip. Ordinary Tuesday morning. People who did not know. "And the other names," Rex said. "The other 17. Being checked. All of them, as far as I know." Walt's voice was careful. "Rex, this is bigger than us now. The right people are on it." "Are they the right people?" "They're the people with authority." Rex had been thinking about the difference between those two things since the night at the motel. He didn't say that to Walt. His phone buzzed with another call, unknown number. "I've got another call," Rex said. "Think about what I said." "Yeah." He switched over. "Yeah." "Is this Rex Maddox?" A woman's voice. Professional tired, the kind of tired that lived in the voice permanently. "Who's asking?" "My name is Sandra Oaks. I'm a caseworker with Child Protective Services in Summit County. I'm calling about Lily Calloway." Rex sat up straight. "Is she okay?" "She's safe. She's in temporary foster care while we locate family." "Is there family?" "We're looking. Her mother has been reported missing. No father in the picture. There's an aunt in Nebraska we're trying to reach." Sandra paused. "Mr. Maddox, Lily asked me to call you." Rex was quiet. "She wanted me to tell you she's okay." Sandra waited. "She also asked if she could see you." "I'm not family." "No, but you're someone she trusts. In her situation, that's not nothing." Another pause, shorter this time. "I can arrange a supervised visit tomorrow afternoon if you're available." Rex looked at the window again. The woman with the groceries had finished loading. The minivan backed out of its spot, slowly, carefully, the way people drove when they had something breakable in the car. "Yeah," he said, "I'll be there." The foster home was a small house with pale blue siding and a chain-link fence around a narrow front yard with a rose bush that needed trimming. Rex pulled his bike to the curb and cut the engine and sat for a moment. A curtain moved in one of the front windows. He pretended not to notice. Sandra Oaks was waiting on the porch, mid-40s, black hair, pulled back, dressed in slacks and a cardigan despite the August heat. She came down the steps as he approached and shook his hand with the directness of someone who had done this job long enough that social formalities had been stripped down to what was actually useful. "How is she?" Rex asked. "Quiet. She's been quiet since she came in." Sandra led him up the steps. "The Holloways are good people. Margaret and Dawn. She's comfortable here physically, but she won't eat much and she doesn't sleep well." "Does she talk?" "To me a little. To the Holloways not much." Sandra opened the door. "She's been watching the window since I told her you were coming." The house smelled like vanilla candles and laundry detergent, the smell of a home that was maintained and cared for. A woman Rex's age stood in the kitchen doorway, watching him with a careful, assessing look that was not unfriendly. Margaret Holloway. Her hands were folded in front of her, and she nodded when Sandra introduced them. The living room was small and clean. A couch with a quilt draped over the back, a television, a basket of toys in the corner that looked like they hadn't been touched. Lily sat on the couch with her hands in her lap, wearing jeans and a clean pink t-shirt. Her hair was washed and braided. She looked up when Rex walked in, and her eyes went wide for just a moment, and then something in her face did the same thing it had done in the motel room. It settled. "Hi, Lily," Rex said. She didn't say anything. She watched him. Sandra gestured to a chair. Rex sat. Sandra moved to stand near the doorway with her arms folded, present but giving space. Rex leaned forward, elbows on his knees the way he had in the motel. It had felt right then. He kept it. "Are you okay?" he asked. She nodded. "Are you eating?" A smaller nod. "Are the Holloways treating you well?" She glanced toward the kitchen, then back at Rex. "Yeah," she said. "They're nice." The word nice carried the weight of all the things it didn't mean. It meant adequate. It meant present. It did not mean known. "I wanted to say thank you," Lily said. Her voice was low and careful, the voice of someone choosing words rather than just producing them. "You didn't have to come back. At the gas station. You could have just gotten on your bike." "Yeah," Rex said, "but you didn't." "No?" She looked at her hands. "Why?" Rex thought about how to answer that honestly. He thought about Cassie and decided not to say that because it was true, but it wasn't the whole truth, and Lily deserved the whole truth. "Because you asked for help," he said, "and I heard you. But you didn't know me." Didn't matter. She was quiet for a moment, turning that over. "Everyone else just walked past, at the gas station, at the park. Before that, too. I tried to tell people before." She paused. "Nobody listened." Rex's jaw tightened. "I'm sorry about that. It's not your fault." Still, another silence. Outside the window, a car drove past, and the light shifted briefly on the floor. "They're looking for my mom," Lily said. Her voice had gone flat, the way voices went when emotion had been examined so thoroughly it had been worn smooth. "Sandra told me." "Yeah, I don't think they'll find her." "Why?" Lily looked up at him. "Because she left on purpose." She said it plainly, without drama, the way you said a thing when you'd been carrying it long enough that the weight had become familiar. "She told me she'd be back." But she said that before. When she meant it, she came back fast. When she said it that way, she didn't. Rex held her gaze. "What way?" Like she was already somewhere else when she was saying it. Lily looked back down. "She told me once when she was drunk that she wished I was never born." The room went still. Sandra didn't move. "She probably doesn't even remember saying it," Lily said. "But I do." Rex didn't say anything for a moment. He had learned somewhere in the years after losing Cassie that the worst thing you could do when someone said something like that was rush to fill the space around it. Some things needed to be said and then left alone long enough to exist fully before you move past them. "That must have been very hard to hear," he said finally. "Yeah," she said. "It doesn't mean she's right." "I know." She said it the way children said things they knew intellectually but hadn't yet been able to make true in the place where they lived. "I know she was drunk. I know she didn't mean it. But knowing that doesn't change how it sounds in my head." Rex looked at her. At the clean braid and the pink t-shirt, the Holloway's attempt to make things better with soap and clean clothes and a basket of untouched toys. At the hands in her lap that were not shaking today, that were just still, the stillness of someone who had used up their trembling. "What do you need, Lily?" he asked. She looked at him confused. "What? You asked to see me, so I'm asking. What do you need?" She stared at him for a long moment. It seemed like the question itself surprised her, like she had not been asked that particular question before and wasn't sure where the answer lived. "I need to know what's going to happen," she said. "To me. Sandra says I'll go to my aunt maybe, or foster care, or—" She stopped, started again. "She says maybe. Everything is maybe, and I know maybe isn't her fault, but I just need one thing to be certain." Rex thought about that. He thought about what he could honestly offer. Not false certainty, not a promise he couldn't keep. "What I can tell you for certain," he said slowly, "is that the man who took you is in custody and he's not getting out. The police found information in his car that connected him to other cases. He's done." She absorbed that. "What about the other kids, the ones in the notebook?" Rex paused. "They're looking. Are they going to be okay?" "I don't know," he said. "I hope so." She nodded. That was enough somehow. The honest hope was better than the false certainty. "There's something else," Sandra said from the doorway. Rex and Lily both looked at her. Sandra uncrossed her arms. "Lily, I was going to wait, but given the conversation." She came farther into the room. "We found your aunt, Diane Calloway. She's in Kearney, Nebraska." Lily's face went very still. "Diane, you know her. My mom talked about her. They didn't get along." She paused. "I've never met her." She's willing to take you, Sandra said. Clean background, stable home. If the full assessment comes back clear, it could be a good placement. Lily looked at Rex, not Sandra. It was a look that said something he had to work to read, not a question, exactly more like a transfer of weight. She was looking at him because she needed to look at someone she had chosen to trust, and she was checking whether what Sandra was saying matched what his face said. His face said he didn't know. He spread his hands slightly, an honest gesture. Can I think about it? Lily asked Sandra. Of course, Sandra said. Rex looked at Sandra. Something in Sandra's expression had shifted slightly, a tightening around the eyes that was there, and then gone. He filed it away without knowing why. On the drive back, Rex called Walt. Diane Calloway, he said, Lily's aunt Nebraska. CPS is considering her for placement. You want me to look into her? I want to know who she is. Rex, Walt said. The system is handling it. They run backgrounds. They run databases, Rex said. Run me a background, the real kind. Walt was quiet, then give me until tomorrow. The next morning, Walt called back. Diane Calloway, 44, Kearney, Nebraska. Owns a house, no mortgage. Works as an office manager for a logistics company, 11 years, same employer. Divorced, no kids, no criminal record. Walt paused. There's a CPS file. Rex's grip tightened on the phone. What kind? 8 years ago, a complaint was filed. A neighbor reported concerns about a child in her care. It was a child of her ex-husband's from a prior relationship, not her own. The case was investigated and closed. Insufficient evidence, the child recanted. The child recanted. That's what the file says. Rex stood at his kitchen window looking at the backyard where the morning light was coming in flat and pale. Recanted or was pressured to recant. That's not in the file. No, Rex said. It wouldn't be. Walt was quiet for a moment. This could be nothing. Kids recant for all kinds of reasons. And this was 8 years ago. The investigators cleared her. An investigator who had an overloaded caseload and a complaint from a neighbor and a child who stopped saying there was a problem, Rex said. You don't know that. I don't, Rex agreed. But Lily is going to be placed with this woman in a week unless someone looks harder. Rex, you're not. I know what I'm not, Rex said. I'm not a social worker, and I'm not a cop, and I'm not her family. I know all of that. He paused. But she wrote that dollar bill because nobody looked closely enough. I'm not going to be another person who doesn't look. Walt didn't respond right away. When he spoke, his voice was measured and careful. What are you going to do? Go to Kearney, Rex said. Just look. Not confront, not interfere. Just look. And if you find something, then I take it to Sandra Oaks and let the process do its job. Walt exhaled. Take Danny with you. Rex was already reaching for his jacket. The drive to Kearney was 4.5 hours. Rex and Danny rode in mostly companionable silence, the land opening flat and wide on all sides as they moved north, the sky going enormous above the plains. The kind of sky that reminded you of how small the things you were carrying actually were, in the scale of the world, though not in the scale of the people they happened to. They found Diane Calloway's house on the west side of Kearney, a well-maintained ranch house on a corner lot, cream siding, tidy garden, a wind chime on the porch that turned slowly in the September air. Rex parked a block down. They sat and watched. Nothing happened for an hour. Then the front door opened and a woman came out. She was tall, with dark hair shot through with gray, not quite the same shade as Joanna Calloway, but with the same bone structure in the jaw, the same way of holding her shoulders. She was carrying a bag of trash to the curbside can. She did it efficiently without looking around and went back inside. She looked ordinary. She looked like someone's aunt. Rex thought about what ordinary looked like and what it could contain. He drove to a diner 3 blocks away and called Sandra Oaks. The CPS file on Diane Calloway, he said. 8 years ago, a complaint investigated closed. Child recanted. Sandra was quiet long enough that Rex could hear her breathing change. How did you get access to? That's not important. What I need to know is whether anyone's looking at that file before you place Lily with her. Mr. Maddox, I'm aware of the file. It was part of our standard background review. The case was closed and cleared. Cleared because the child recanted. That's standard investigative protocol. If the child is not corroborating the complaint, how old was the child? Rex said. Silence. Sandra, how old? 7, Sandra said quietly. 7 years old, Rex said, being asked by adults to confirm a story about an adult in her household. And she changed her story. Sandra said nothing. I'm not accusing Diane Calloway of anything, Rex said. I'm asking you to talk to that child. She'd be 15 now, old enough to have a different conversation. Another long silence. The child moved out of state with her father after the divorce. Find her, Rex said, before you put Lily in that house. He hung up and sat in the diner parking lot. Danny leaned against his bike nearby watching Rex without asking questions, which was one of Danny's best qualities. Rex called Walt. The file is there, Rex said. 7-year-old child. Sandra knows about it, but the case was cleared. And now, I asked her to find the girl. She'd be 15. Walt was quiet. Then you've done what you can from this side. For now. Rex? Walt's voice had a particular quality, the quality it got when he was going to say something Rex didn't want to hear and was going to say it anyway. You can't protect this child from everything. The system has her. You've done more than anyone else would have, but you can't stand between her and every possible risk forever. I know that. Do you? Rex looked down the street at Diane Calloway's neat house with the wind chime turning on the porch. I know, he said again, but I can keep looking until someone else is looking close enough. He rode back to Colorado. That evening back in Fort Morgan, Rex went to see Lily again. Sandra had arranged another visit. This time Margaret Holloway let him in, without the careful watching, just held the door open and pointed toward the living room. Lily was at the kitchen table this time, not the couch. She had a spiral notebook in front of her, not writing in it, just sitting with it open to a blank page. She had a pen in her hand, the blue ballpoint from her backpack. She looked up when he came in, the slight settling of her face the same as before. You came back, she said. I said I would. She looked at the pen in her hand, then put it down on the notebook. Sandra told me she's looking into something about my aunt. She didn't say what. Rex sat across from her. I asked her to. Lily looked at him. Why? Because I wanted to make sure. She was quiet, reading his face with that grave, deliberate attention. You think something's wrong with my aunt? I don't know, Rex said. That's why I asked someone to look. She absorbed that. Then she picked up the pen again and turned it slowly in her fingers. I wrote everything down, she said. In here. She touched the notebook. Everything I remember about Gerald, things he said, the route he drove, a name I heard him say on the phone. Rex went still. What name? She opened the notebook to a page near the front. Her handwriting was small and careful, nothing like the desperate scrawl on the dollar bill. This was different. This was organized. He took a call when we were driving, she said. He thought I was asleep. He said everything's on schedule. Stringer's been notified. She looked up at Rex, and then he said an address. I only caught part of it. Wrote something I couldn't hear the number. And a color, blue roof. Rex's hands had gone very still on the table. She watched his face. You know that name, she said. How did you know to write it down? Rex asked. Because I was listening, she said simply. I've been listening my whole life. When adults think you're asleep or think you're not paying attention, that's when they say the real things. Rex looked at this 9-year-old girl with her neat handwriting and her methodical notebook and her blue ballpoint pen and the old careful eyes in her young face. He thought about all the things she'd had to learn to survive. He thought about how those things shouldn't have been hers to learn. Can I have a copy of this? He asked. She tore out the page and slid it across the table to him. The police have this information, Rex said. Gerald told them what he could. But seeing it written down in your words, the exact phrasing that matters. Sandra needs to see this. I know, Lily said. I was going to give it to her. You were waiting. I was waiting to see if you came back first, she said, because I wanted you to have it too. Rex looked at the page, the address fragment, the name, the color detail. Enough to cross-reference with what the investigators already had. Maybe enough to sharpen the timeline. Lily, he said. She looked at him. What you did, all of it, writing the bill, staying calm in that car, listening to his call, and remembering it, writing it down. Most adults wouldn't have been able to do that. She didn't respond to the compliment. She seemed to consider it and set it aside the way she set aside a lot of things that didn't have immediate practical use. Do you think they'll find the other kids? She asked. I think they have a better chance now. She nodded. Her fingers found the edge of the notebook and she closed it gently. That night, Rex called the lead investigator assigned to the Stokes case, a woman named Hartley, who had spent 20 years in crimes against children and had the voice to show for it, stripped down to the essential frequencies, no spare warmth wasted. I have a witness statement, Rex said, from Lily Calloway, written down in her own words. She heard Stokes on the phone during the drive. She has the name and a partial address and a detail about the building. A pause. She already gave a statement. This is different, Rex said. She wrote it herself in the car after she got to the foster home. She was listening during the drive, and she remembered it exactly. Mr. Maddox, we appreciate. She's 9 years old and she's sharper than most adults I know, Rex said. She heard him say Stringer's been notified. She heard him say Blue Roof. I think she can help you close on that address before the 3-day window. The window, he could hear Hartley calculating. Bring it in tomorrow morning, Hartley said. Early. Rex was there at 7. Hartley was a tall woman with close-cropped gray hair and a handshake like a mechanical press. She took the page from Rex without ceremony and read it 3 times, each read slower than the last. The Blue Roof detail, she said. We had the address from the notebook. We didn't have the building description. She heard him say it. She was 9 years old in a moving car. She wrote it down the same night, Rex said. Before she slept, she told me she was afraid she'd forget it. Hartley looked at the page again. Something had shifted in her expression, a slight tightening that could have been frustration or could have been the look of someone recalibrating. We move tomorrow, Hartley said, if the description matches and the address checks out. And if it does, Hartley looked at him. Then we have a problem that's bigger than Gerald Stokes, and we start taking it apart. Rex drove home slowly past the gas station on Route 47. He slowed without planning to and sat in the lot for a moment, engine idling, looking at the glass front and the fluorescent light and the clerk inside different persons sitting in the same lean against the register that the other clerk had used. The light buzzed. Moths circled it. He thought about a girl smoothing a dollar bill on her knee in the back of a car. He thought about what it had cost her to stay calm for 4 hours. To not cry, not scream, not do the things that fear instructed. To think instead. To plan. To act in the small, careful window she had been given. He pulled out of the lot and rode home. 2 days later, at 6 in the morning, his phone rang. Hartley. The address Joel's checked out, she said without preamble. We executed a warrant at 5 this morning. White building, 2 outbuildings, 1 with a blue corrugated roof, exactly as described. She paused. We found 3 children on site. Rex gripped the phone. Are they okay? Physically, yes. Frightened. They'd been there less than a week. Another pause. There were also documents. Financial records, communication logs. This is a network, Mr. Maddox, not just Gerald Stokes. A coordinated network that's been operating in 4 states for at least 3 years. Stringer. We have him in custody. He's talking. Hartley's voice was still stripped down to essentials, but underneath it, Rex could hear the quality of something that had shifted. There's something else. Among the documents we found at the site, there were files on the children, background information, family situations, how they were selected, who was alone, who had no one looking. She paused. Lily Calloway's file was there. Rex said nothing. Her full name, her address, her school, her mother's history, the documentation of her mother's disappearance. It was marked as a confirmed acquisition. The words sat in the air between them. Her mother, Rex said. We're looking at that, Hartley said. There's material in the documents suggesting the mother's disappearance may not have been voluntary. Rex closed his eyes. We're pursuing it, Hartley said. I can't tell you more than that right now, but Mr. Maddox. She paused, and for the first time her voice carried something that wasn't efficiency. That girl in the foster home, what she gave us the note in her own handwriting, the detail about the blue roof. It's what allowed us to verify the address and move before the window closed. Another pause. She saved those 3 children. Rex sat down. He was in his kitchen, and the morning light was coming through the window, and the world outside was ordinary and unhurried, and a 9-year-old girl with a blue ballpoint pen had done something that a full federal investigation had been circling around. Does she know? Rex asked. Not yet, Hartley said. I'll leave that to you if you're willing. He was in the car before the call ended. He got to the foster home at 8:15. Margaret Holloway let him in and told him Lily was in the kitchen with breakfast she hadn't touched yet. He walked in and sat across from her without ceremony. She looked up from a plate of scrambled eggs that had gone cold. The police went to the address, Rex said. Last night. She went still. They found 3 children. They're safe. Lily's hands moved to the edge of the table. Her knuckles were white. And the man, Rex said, the one Gerald was going to deliver you to. They have him. She breathed, just breathed for a moment, her chest rising and falling under the clean t-shirt the Holloways had given her. The detail you wrote down, Rex said, the blue roof, that was the piece they needed to move before time ran out. Lily looked at the table. Her jaw was working in the way that meant she was holding something in a wave that was building and that she was deciding whether to let through. Those 3 kids, she said, would they have been gone Yes, Rex said. He wasn't going to soften it. She pressed her lips together. Then the wave came through, not crying exactly. Not the way people expected children to cry. It was more like a single, sustained sound that started somewhere very deep and moved up through her and out one long breath, and then she put her face in her hands. Rex sat and let her. He didn't reach out. He didn't say anything. He understood that some things needed to move through a person without being interrupted or redirected, and that witnessing was sometimes the most honest form of support. After a while, she lowered her hands. Her face was wet, but she was composed. There's something else, Rex said. She looked at him. The police found documentation at the site, files on the children they were targeting. He paused. Lily, there was a file on your mother. Her expression went very careful. They're looking into it, Rex said. The investigators think your mother's disappearance may not have been her choice. The words landed in the silence of the kitchen. Through the window, a bird landed on the fence and sat there, tipping its head, then flew. She didn't leave on purpose. Lily's voice was very small. I don't know for certain, Rex said, but they're looking, and what they found suggests she may have known something about these people, or they may have thought she did. Lily was quiet for a long time. Rex watched the thoughts move across her face, the reorganization of a story she had been carrying in one shape for more than a week, the shape where her mother had chosen to leave, and the way that story was now being handed back to her in a different shape, one that hadn't fully formed yet, but had a different weight to it. She might be alive, Lily said. She might be, Rex said. That's what they're trying to find out. She looked at the cold eggs on the plate. She picked up the fork and took a bite methodically, not because she was hungry, but because her body needed to do something while her mind worked. Rex watched her. He thought about how she had reorganized herself after the motel, after the county facility, after coming to this house each time quietly and without drama, each time finding the next position she could hold. He thought about what that kind of resilience cost, how it was paid for. The aunt, Lily said. Diane, what happened with that? Rex had gotten a message from Sandra 2 days ago. He had been deciding when to pass it on and decided now was the time. Sandra found the girl from the old CPS case, Rex said. The one who recanted when she was 7. She talked to her. Lily waited. The girl said she'd been scared, Rex said carefully, that she changed her story because she didn't want to cause problems. But she also said it was a long time ago and that she hadn't seen Diane in years and that she wasn't sure anymore what it meant or didn't mean. So it could still be dangerous. Sandra doesn't think so, Rex said. The girl said it was a single incident, a bad night, not a pattern. Diane was going through her divorce. She was not okay. The girl said she believed Diane had changed. He paused. Sandra talked to Diane herself, multiple times. She also did a second home visit and spoke to 2 of Diane's neighbors and her employer. And Sandra thinks the placement is appropriate, Rex said. She's not certain. Nobody's ever certain, but she believes it. Lily absorbed that. Do you believe it? Rex looked at her directly. I think Sandra is good at her job. I think she looked harder than she would have if I hadn't pushed. And I think she wouldn't recommend this if she didn't believe it. But you don't know. Nobody knows, Rex said. That's the honest answer. You don't know until you're there. But someone looked this time. Someone looked hard. Lily set down the fork. She was quiet for a moment, looking at nothing in particular, somewhere in the middle distance, where people looked when they were making decisions that were too large for their age. Okay, she said. Rex nodded. Can I take my notebook? She asked. Of course. And my pen. Yeah. She pushed the plate aside and folded her hands on the table. I've never been to Nebraska, she said. I hear it's flat, Rex said. Something crossed her face, then very quickly, the flicker of something lighter. Not a smile exactly, but close. I know about flat, she said. Sandra called Rex that evening. She had something else to share, something she prefaced by saying she probably shouldn't be sharing, but was going to anyway because he had earned it. The investigation at the Stringer site had turned up financial transactions, a paper trail that ran backward through layers of shell accounts in dead companies, the kind of trail that took forensic accountants months to follow. But in the most recent transactions, there was a payment, small $500, the kind of amount designed to look like nothing. The destination was a storage unit in Denver, one that was paid up through the end of the year. The unit was registered to a Joanna Calloway. Sandra said the investigators were going to the storage unit that afternoon. Rex asked to be notified. At 4 in the afternoon, Hartley called. The storage unit, Hartley said. She'd been living in it. Rex pulled over. There was a sleeping bag, food, clothes, a phone that's out of battery. It looks like she went there voluntarily to hide. She knew something about the Stringer network, or she'd stumbled into something and she was afraid. She wasn't taken. She ran. A pause. She ran and left her daughter behind. Rex sat with the engine off. The highway stretched ahead. Is she alive, he asked. We don't know yet. The unit hasn't been used in at least 4 days. But there was a note. What did it say? Hartley read it slowly. Lily is at the park on Ridgeway. Go get her. Keep her safe. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I thought I was protecting her by staying away. I'm so sorry. Rex put his head back against the seat. She knew someone would find the unit, Hartley said. She left enough to be found. She wanted Lily to be found. She just... A pause. She didn't know how to do it differently. Find her, Rex said. We're looking. Find her. Mr. Maddox, Hartley's voice was not unkind. We will do everything we can. Rex drove back to his house and sat in the driveway for a long time. He thought about Joanna Calloway alone in a storage unit, afraid of people she could see from her windows but not name. He thought about all the ways fear could make people leave. He thought about Lily in the park on the broken swing, waiting 2 days, her mother's absence, shaped exactly like the kind of absence she'd always feared. He thought about the note. I thought I was protecting her. He thought about how protection and abandonment could look identical from the outside. He went inside and sat at the kitchen table and pulled out the dollar bill and looked at it for a long time. The smudged E, the uneven letters, the press of a child's hand, hard, making sure the ink took. She'd asked for help, and the world had mostly walked past, but not entirely. The call from Walt came at 10 that night. The 3 children from the site, Walt said. 2 of them are back with family. The 3rd is in county care. Investigators are working her case. He paused. Danny and Tripp want to know if there's anything else. Tell them to go home, Rex said. They did enough. Rex, Walt's voice was steady. How are you doing? Rex looked at the dollar bill on the table. I don't know yet. That's fair. Walt, if Gerald Stokes had gotten 2 more hours with Lily. Rex stopped, started again. If I hadn't gotten the right bill. If I'd been closer to the door when I left, and I was already riding before I counted the change, she's not, Walt said. That's the only fact that matters tonight. The clerk didn't look. You looked. I got lucky. Rex, Walt's voice got quieter. I know what you're doing. I've watched you do it since Cassie. You take every outcome that didn't happen and you carry it alongside the one that did, and you hold both until you can't tell which is real. That's not memory. That's punishment. Rex didn't say anything. Lily is in a safe house, Walt said. Gerald Stokes is in custody. Stringer is in custody. 3 children are safe who weren't this morning. And somewhere out there, a woman who ran from something terrifying might still be alive because the right people are now looking for her. He paused. You did that. Not alone, but you were the beginning of it. It shouldn't have depended on me. No, Walt said. It shouldn't. The clerk should have looked. Someone at the park should have noticed a child sitting alone for 2 days. The systems that are supposed to catch these things should catch them before a 9-year-old has to write a distress signal on a dollar bill. He paused. But they didn't. And you did. And that's not nothing. Rex looked out the window. The backyard was dark. He used to sit out there with Cassie in the evenings and watch the fireflies. She had chased them with a jar, and he had told her not to catch them, that they needed to be free, and she had told him she just wanted to look, just for a minute. And he had watched her run across the grass with the jar in her hands and the fireflies rising around her. And he had thought that was what it looked like to be happy. He thought about that now. I'm going to Kearney, Rex said. When they transfer Lily to Diane Calloway, I'm going to ride out there and make sure it goes right. Walt was quiet for a moment. Then, okay, you think it's too much. I think you're going to do it regardless of what I think, Walt said. So I'll say okay. Rex almost smiled, almost. Get some sleep, Walt said. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. Rex put the phone down. He picked up the dollar bill and looked at it one more time. Then he folded it carefully, the same fold, the same crease, and put it in the inside pocket of his vest against his chest, where it had been since the night he found it. He went to bed. He slept. 2 days later, Sandra called him at 7 a.m. They found Joanna Calloway, she said. Rex sat up. She's alive. She was in Cheyenne, Wyoming. She'd been staying with a woman she met at a shelter, someone she trusted enough to sleep. She was dehydrated and frightened, and she hasn't eaten properly in 10 days, but she's alive. Sandra's voice had a quality Rex hadn't heard in it before, something looser, something that had been wound tight and was slightly less tight now. She's being transported to a hospital in Denver. She's going to be okay. Going, Rex closed his eyes. There's more, Sandra said. She's cooperating with the investigation. She saw something 3 weeks ago, a transaction, a conversation she wasn't supposed to hear. She didn't know what it was exactly, but she knew enough to be afraid. She ran because she thought if she stayed, whoever she'd seen would come for Lily. She thought leaving made Lily safer. She was wrong, Rex said. She was terrified and she made a terrible choice, Sandra said quietly. Those aren't the same thing. Rex thought about the note in the storage unit. I thought I was protecting her. When can Lily know? He asked. Today, Sandra said. I'm going to tell her this morning. Rex was at the Foster house by 9. He wasn't expected, but Margaret Holloway let him in anyway without hesitation, which told him something about how the last 2 weeks had gone, that the man who showed up on a motorcycle had become the kind of person who was let in without asking why. Sandra was already there. She and Lily were sitting together at the kitchen table, and when Rex came in, Lily looked up, and something in her face was different. Not settled in the careful way she had been settling herself. Something warmer. Something that was still fragile, but that had a different quality than fragility, more like something new. She had been crying. Her eyes were red and her face was still wet, but she wasn't crying now. She was sitting straight. You heard, Rex said. Sandra told me, Lily said. Rex sat down. She's not going to be okay right away, Lily said. It was not a question. She was working it out in real time, applying everything she understood about her mother to this new information, fitting it carefully into the shape of things she already knew. She drinks too much and she runs away from things. Those don't stop just because she was scared. No, Rex said, they don't. But she came back, Lily said. She was trying to come back. Rex looked at her. Yeah, he said. She was trying. Lily wiped her face with the back of her hand. Sandra says I can see her when she's stable enough, maybe a week. That's good. It might be weird, Lily said. It might be really hard. Probably, Rex said. But she's alive. She said it the way she'd said a lot of things in the last 2 weeks, plainly, without elaboration, the fact itself carrying all the weight it needed to carry without decoration. Yeah, Rex said, she's alive. Lily looked at him for a moment. Then she picked up the notebook from beside her elbow and turned it to a blank page and uncapped her pen. I want to write something down, she said, while I remember it. Rex waited. She wrote for about 2 minutes, her head down the pen, moving in small, careful strokes. Then she capped the pen and closed the notebook and looked at him. What did you write? He asked. Today, she said simply. I write down the good days too. Rex looked at this child, at everything she was and everything she had survived and everything she was still going to have to survive, because the story was not over and the world was not fixed, and her mother was in a hospital in Denver with a long road ahead, and the aunt in Nebraska was still a stranger, and the system was still broken in all the ways it had always been broken. And she was writing down the good days. Lily, Rex said. She looked at him. You're going to be okay. She looked at him for a long moment. Not the way she'd looked at him in the motel with the old tired eyes and the silence that accepted honest uncertainty. This was different. This was a look that had something in it. I know, she said. And for the first time, Rex believed her. The transfer to Kearney was scheduled for a Friday in mid-September. Sandra called Rex on Thursday afternoon. Lily asked if you'd be there, Sandra said, for the handoff. I'll be there, Rex said. She also asked if you could ride your bike. Rex looked at his bike in the driveway. Yeah, he said, I can do that. He arrived at the Foster home at 8 in the morning. Lily was on the front porch with her backpack. The broken zipper had been fixed, he noticed. New hardware, the slider catching cleanly now. He wondered if she'd done it herself or if Margaret Holloway had done it in the night without telling her the way people did things for children they had briefly loved. She was wearing jeans and a clean blue sweatshirt. Her hair was in a braid again, neat and straight. She looked like a different girl in some ways than the one he had seen at the motel, and in the most important ways she looked exactly the same. You rode the bike, she said. You asked me to. She came down the steps. Margaret Holloway was in the doorway behind her, and she lifted a hand when Rex looked up. A small wave, something in her face that was doing the particular work of not showing how much this cost of releasing something that had briefly been hers. Sandra was inside completing paperwork with the speed of a woman who had completed a great deal of paperwork in her career. She came out with a folder and a bag of Lily's things, a few items the Holloways had bought for her over the course of the stay, and she loaded them in the trunk of her car. Ready? Sandra asked Lily. Lily looked at Rex. You're riding up to Kearney. Part of the way, Rex said. I'll ride to the county line. She nodded at that. She seemed satisfied with it, with the specificity of it, the county line, not a vague promise, but a defined point. She climbed into Sandra's car. Rex rode behind them for 2 hours up through the flat land of eastern Colorado, the grass going golden now in September, the sky enormous and pale blue overhead, the road straight and certain in the way that flat roads were. He thought about nothing in particular. He let the road be what it was. At the county line, the sign appeared. He slowed and pulled to the shoulder and stopped. Sandra's car continued north without slowing, because that was the plan, because stopping would have made it harder. He watched the car go. A small face in the rear window turned to look back. He raised one hand. She raised one hand. The car went small and then was gone. Rex sat for a while at the county line with the engine running. The wind moved through the grass on both sides of the road. A hawk circled somewhere high to the east, riding something invisible. He turned the bike around and rode south. He had gone about 40 miles when his phone buzzed with a message from Sandra. He pulled over and read it. She's asking about the hawk. She says there was a hawk. Rex looked at the sky and he typed back, tell her they ride the thermals, the warm air columns. They don't flap when they're on one. They just go with it. He put the phone in his pocket and rode home. In the weeks that followed the transfer, Rex found himself doing something he hadn't done in years. He started paying attention to the gas stations. Not in a dramatic way, not with any particular plan. He just found that when he stopped to fill his tank or buy coffee, he watched more carefully than he had before. He watched the people who came in and out, who was with whom, what the faces looked like, whether anything was wrong in the way that things could be wrong without announcing themselves. Most of the time, everything was fine. People bought gas and chips and coffee and argued mildly about directions and took their change without looking at it and drove away. The ordinary world in all its ordinary motion. But he watched. He told Walt about it one afternoon at the clubhouse sitting on the bench outside in the October sun. Walt listened, didn't say anything for a moment. That makes sense, Walt said finally. Does it? You found one thing by paying attention. So now you pay attention. Walt picked up his coffee. That's not a problem, Rex. That's just how it changes you. I'm not going to make a habit of this, Rex said. I'm not going to become someone who thinks every gas station has a kidnapped child in it. Of course not, Walt said. But you're also not going to be the guy who walks out to his bike without counting his change. He looked at Rex sideways. There's a version of paying attention that's reasonable and sane. You're doing that version. Rex thought about it. I called Hartley last week. Yeah, asked her how the case was going. She told me they had identified 41 children who had been targeted by the network over 3 years. 36 had been located and were safe or in the process of being placed. 5 were still unaccounted for. Walt set down his coffee. 5, Rex said. Kids who were taken or ran or disappeared, and the network's records are incomplete. Hartley's team is working on it. FBI's working on it. But 5 kids somewhere. He looked at his hands. Not found yet. Walt was quiet. I asked her if there was anything I could do, Rex said. Walt looked at him. What did she say? She said the best thing civilians could do was look. Be present. Know what it looked like when something was wrong. Call when they were uncertain instead of waiting until they were certain. He paused. She said most of these situations had a moment where it could have gone differently before the car door closed, before the building, before anyone was trapped anywhere. And in most of those moments, there were people nearby who had a feeling and decided it wasn't their place to act on it. She's right, Walt said. Yeah, Rex said. They sat in the sun for a while. A truck went by on the road. A dog barked somewhere down the block. Tripp asked about you, Walt said. He wants to know if you're doing anything different with the group, any kind of organized thing. Rex frowned. I'm not starting a vigilante squad if that's what he's suggesting. He's not suggesting that, Walt said. He's suggesting that 15 men who are already out on the road all the time stopping at gas stations and diners and rest stops could be better versions of what you already were. Paying attention, knowing what to look for. Rex looked at him. Nobody's getting out of their lane, Walt said. Nobody's going to kick down doors or chase cars. But calling in something that doesn't look right, making sure someone who needs to be seen gets seen. He paused. That's not a vigilante squad. That's just 15 men deciding to be less like the clerk. Rex was quiet for a long time. I'll think about it, he said. He thought about it. He called Sandra Oaks and asked her what a person would need to know practically to be useful in the way Walt was describing. She talked for 40 minutes without stopping, and by the end, Rex had 2 pages of notes and a reading list and the names of 3 organizations she thought were doing the work well. He called Hartley. Hartley was more guarded, more institutional in her thinking, but she was also a woman who had spent 20 years watching situations where someone should have acted sooner. She gave him a list of 6 things: behavioral signs, situational red flags, what to say when you called in a concern, how to be a useful witness without getting in the way of an investigation. He brought it all to the group on a Sunday evening. 14 men sat in the clubhouse and listened to Rex talk for an hour. Nobody interrupted. Nobody asked the expected questions about whether this was their problem or their place. These were men who had been present for things, who had seen what happened in the margins of the world, who understood at a level below articulation that the line between the people who acted and the people who didn't was not drawn by character or courage, but by attention. At the end, Danny raised his hand. "Is this going to take a lot of extra time?" he asked. "No," Rex said. "It's going to take a different kind of noticing. You're already at the gas stations. You're already at the diners. You just look differently." Danny nodded. "Okay." Tripp said, "Do we need some kind of system for passing information?" Rex looked at Walt. "We'll work that out," Walt said. It was not a program. It was not an organization. It was 15 men on motorcycles already covering thousands of miles of road per year, choosing to be slightly more present, slightly more alert, slightly more willing to stop and look and call. 2 months later, Danny called Rex from a rest stop in Wyoming. "There's a girl here," Danny said. "Maybe 10, 11. She's with a man who says she's his niece, but she keeps looking at the exit." "Stay there," Rex said. "Don't make contact. Call 911 now and give them your location and what you're seeing. Don't hang up until they tell you to. And then you watch the exit until they arrive. You don't have to do anything else. Just make sure they're still there." Danny called back 20 minutes later. The police had arrived. The man was not the girl's uncle. She was from a missing persons report filed 3 weeks ago in Montana. She was safe. Rex sat with that for a while. He thought about the clerk at the Shell on Route 47 scrolling through his phone while a child's handwritten plea sat in his register. He thought about Danny at the rest stop in Wyoming, calling it and staying watching the exit. He thought about the 300 miles of road between those 2 moments. He called Danny. "You did good," Rex said. "I just looked," Danny said. "Yeah," Rex said, "that's what it takes." 3 weeks after the Kearney transfer, Sandra called. "Lily is settled," she said. "Diane Calloway is a careful woman. She asks a lot of questions and she listens to the answers. Lily says she talks too much about feelings." "That's progress," Rex said. "She's enrolled in school, 4th grade. She told her teacher on the first day that she was good at noticing things. The teacher said she's right." Rex smiled. "Yeah, she is." "Her mother's being assessed for a witness protection arrangement," Sandra said. "The timeline is uncertain, but there's real movement. The goal is Lily and Joanna reuniting when Joanna is stable and the situation is safe. That could be 6 months, could be a year." "Does Lily know?" "She knows there's a plan," Sandra said. "She's good with plans." There was a pause, the kind of pause where something else was coming. "She asked me to give you a message," Sandra said. Rex waited. "She said, tell him I wrote it down." Rex was quiet for a moment. "What did she write down?" "She said you'd know." He did know. He thought about the notebook, the neat handwriting, the good days recorded alongside the difficult ones. He thought about a girl who had understood at 9 years old that the act of recording something made it more real, made it more yours, made it harder for the world to take back. "Tell her I'm glad," he said. "I will." After the call, Rex sat at the kitchen table. The dollar bill was in the inside pocket of his vest, where it had been since the night he found it. He took it out and looked at it one more time. The ink had faded slightly in the weeks since, or maybe it just seemed that way, the urgency of it settling into something more ordinary looking now that the urgency was past. "Help me." He thought about all the bills that had been handed over in this country tonight, all the desperate small gestures that passed through hands and registers without being seen. He thought about how many children there were sitting on broken swings, writing on dollar bills, trusting that the right person would come. He thought about how often the right person didn't come. He thought about how once he had come. He went to his desk and found an envelope. He put the dollar bill inside it. He addressed it to Sandra Oaks at the Summit County CPS office, and he wrote a note on a piece of paper and put that inside too. The note said, "For when Lily is old enough to want it back." He sealed the envelope and put it by the door. Then he went outside. The September evening was cool, the light coming low and amber through the trees at the back of his property, the long light of early fall that made everything look like it was already in the past, already becoming memory. He walked to the edge of the yard and stood in the grass and looked at the sky. He thought about all the roads out there, all the headlights moving through the dark, all the people in motion and the people staying still, and the children in between, navigating a world that had not been made for them and finding their way through it anyway. The way children always had, the way they would keep finding their way, one small act of courage at a time. He went back inside. He poured a glass of water and stood at the kitchen window and watched the yard go dark as the evening came on, the amber light fading to blue, the blue going gray, the gray settling into the particular quiet of an ordinary night. He thought about Cassie. He thought about her running across the yard with the drone and the fireflies. He thought about what she had taught him without knowing she was teaching him about attention, about presence, about the way the world looked when you actually saw it. He missed her. He would always miss her. That hole in his chest was exactly the same size and shape it had ever been, and it would stay that way, and he had made a kind of peace with that, the way you made peace with the permanent things. But something else had happened in these 3 weeks, something that sat alongside the loss without filling it or replacing it, something that didn't diminish it and wasn't meant to, something that was its own small real thing. He had looked at a dollar bill in the right light at the right moment. And a girl named Lily Calloway was in Kearney, Nebraska, writing down the good days. 6 months later, Sandra Oaks drove to Kearney, Nebraska. She had Joanna Calloway in the passenger seat. It was the first time Joanna had left the state under the protective arrangement, and it was the first time she and her daughter had been in the same room in 3 months. Joanna had her hands folded in her lap the entire drive, not speaking, looking at the road with the expression of someone who understood that some things couldn't be rehearsed. Sandra pulled up in front of Diane Calloway's house at 2 in the afternoon. The rose bush had been trimmed. The front door opened before they reached the porch. Lily stood in the doorway. She was wearing a yellow t-shirt and jeans, and her hair was loose around her shoulders, and she was taller by a noticeable inch than she had been in September. She looked at her mother across the length of the front walk, and her mother looked back at her, and neither of them moved for a moment. Then Joanna walked forward, and Lily walked forward, and they met in the middle of the front walk, and Joanna put her arms around her daughter and held on, and Lily held on back, and the sound that came from Joanna was not anything Sandra tried to name. Diane Calloway stood behind Lily in the doorway. She met Sandra's eyes and looked away, blinking. She stepped back inside to give them the walk. Sandra stood by her car. It was not a fixed thing. It was not a permanent repair. Joanna Calloway had a long road ahead of her, and the road had potholes and uncertain stretches and places where the light didn't reach. Lily would carry things from the last year that children shouldn't have to carry, and those things would work themselves out over time in ways that couldn't be predicted. The system would remain broken in all the ways it had always been broken, and there would be other children on other broken swings, and some of them would be found and some would not. None of that was resolved. But this moment was happening. These two people had made it back to each other against odds that had been arranged against them by people who traded in children's lives. Sandra let herself have the moment. She was allowed. She looked at her phone. She found Rex Maddox's number. She typed "It happened. They're together." A pause. 3 dots. Then, good. She put the phone in her pocket and watched Joanna and Lily standing in the middle of the front walk, neither of them in any hurry to let go. The wind moved through the yard. The trimmed rose bush had one late bloom on it, red, and slightly past its peak, holding on into the September cool. Rex was riding when the message came through. He pulled over on a stretch of Route 47, not far from the Shell station, and read it on his phone. Good. He put the phone away. He looked at the highway both directions. East, the lands went flat and pale into the distance. West, it rose slightly toward the foothills, the mountains beginning to show their shapes at the edge of sight, gray and white and enormous. He thought about a girl writing words on a dollar bill in the back of a moving car. He thought about the press of her hand making sure the ink took. He started the bike and pulled back onto the highway. He rode west toward the mountains. The road was long and clear, and the sky was enormous above it, and somewhere behind him in a town in Nebraska, on a front walk with a trimmed rose bush, a mother and her daughter were learning to be together again. He rode. In Kearney, Nebraska, on an evening in late October, Lily Calloway sat at the kitchen table in Diane Calloway's house and did her homework. The kitchen smelled like the chili Diane was making on the stove, and the wind outside was picking up in the way it did in Nebraska in the fall coming from the north with a cold edge. Lily finished her math and put it aside. She opened her notebook. She had started with the one she'd brought from the foster home, the one with Gerald's route notes and the phone call transcription and the details about the building. That notebook was with Sandra now, part of the case file needed for when the trials came. She had been given a new one blue cover, unlined, which she liked better because she could draw in it too. She opened to the current page and wrote the date. She wrote, "Good day. Diane made chili. She asked me 3 questions about school, which is 2 more than yesterday, which is progress." She stopped, thought, wrote the hawk I saw from the car. Rex told Sandra they ride the warm air. They don't have to flap. They just go with it. She looked at that for a moment. Then she drew a hawk in the margin, small and quick wings spread, riding something invisible. She capped the pen and closed the notebook. "Chili's ready," Diane called. Lily got up and put the notebook in her room in the top drawer of the desk Diane had gotten for her from a second-hand store, the drawer where she kept the things she wanted to keep. The pen was in there too, the blue ballpoint. She went to have dinner. At the Shell station off Route 47, the clerk was finishing his shift. The new hardware on the door had finally been replaced, and the fluorescent bulb above the register had been swapped out for an LED that cast a cleaner, brighter light. He was counting the drawer before handoff the way he always did, running through the bills. He counted them slowly now. He had started doing that after the biker had come in and put that dollar bill on the counter and asked if he'd looked at it. He had thought about that for a long time, longer than he had expected to. It wasn't guilt because he hadn't known, and you couldn't hold what you didn't know. But it was something. He looked at the faces now. Nothing unusual tonight, nothing to call in, just the ordinary traffic of an ordinary Tuesday, people getting gas and going somewhere, the highway running dark in both directions, the night ordinary and wide, and full of the things that were happening in it, whether anyone noticed or not. He finished counting and closed the drawer. He went back to his phone for the last hour of his shift, but he kept it face down on the counter, just in case. Rex Maddox rode back on a Thursday in November, the cold coming in off the mountains. Now his breath visible in front of his face, shield the road empty and clear. On the way back, he passed the Shell on Route 47. He didn't stop. He had stopped there enough times now that the ceremony of it had settled into something quieter. It was just a gas station on a highway. It was also the place where things had turned. He rode past it and watched it appear in his mirror, the neon sign buzzing in the cold air, red and white, a lit moth in the dark. He watched it shrink. He thought about the night he had stood in that parking lot with a dollar bill in his hand and looked down the highway in both directions and found nothing. Just darkness and the distant orange glow of a town he couldn't see. He thought about what it had cost him nothing to do. He had counted his change. He had stopped. He had made a call. That was the whole of it. And from that small, ordinary stopping, a chain of things had moved. 3 children found, a network broken open, a mother found alive, a girl in Nebraska writing down the good days. He rode south. The highway was long and dark, and the mountains were at the edge of sight in the last light, and the stars were coming on overhead, and the road was what it had always been. Something you moved through, something that connected you to the thing at the other end. He rode, and somewhere ahead the lights of a town appeared, small and yellow and warm, the ordinary lights of ordinary people in ordinary rooms, living ordinary lives inside of which the remarkable and the terrible and the everyday were all happening at once, always the way they always had, the way they always would. He rode toward the lights. That was enough. That was all of it. That was the whole thing.